Good afternoon, Lapeer. I wanted to take a moment to have a discussion about today's student walkout demonstrations at three of our buildings, Rowan Warner, Zemmer, and Lapeer High School, and just share the district's perspective on why this student voice and this opportunity for students' voices to be heard was so important in the educational process today, and also have a dialogue with our community about why it's so vitally important that we support our children in these efforts. Oftentimes we grow frustrated as adults with some of the national talking points on many of these divisive issues, and we, for better or for worse, retreat into certain political positions and fail to hear the other side and come to some sort of compromise. We see that far too often at both the state level and national. What I can tell you, after having spoken to literally thousands of students in the last week and a half through student assemblies on students' safety and school security, having a parent forum to interact with members of our community, and participating in a first-hand way this morning at two of our buildings and watching how our students conduct themselves, I can say beyond a shadow of a doubt that my opinion of our young people and their capacity to have this discussion in a mature and organized fashion in a positive way with one another was reinforced in ways I can't even begin to describe. In many ways, much more respectfully and organized and impressively than how many adults handle this discourse. It's disheartening for those of us in the district to monitor some of the online discussion about this issue as they impugn the motives of our young people, saying that kids are only engaged in this type of behavior to get out of class. They don't really understand the issues. And I can only say that if you were there to witness it firsthand, I think your opinion may be a little bit different. That why can't we as a community presume positive intentions of our kids with the thought that they can craft better and more appropriate solutions to these problems that, quite frankly, adults have failed to solve for a number of years. I want to hear what our students have to say, because their experience as young people is different than anything any of us as adults ever knew. Our high school experience was significantly different than theirs. They have to watch every 6 months or so, sometimes even more frequently than that, as another school shooting happens, where they can see their peers, they can identify with them, empathize with the loss that their friends and family have to deal with. And they see that on a far too frequent basis. And they've got to process, what does that mean for them? And some of these issues have hit pretty close to home here in Lapeer. And so it doesn't seem as far away as Florida or Newtown, Connecticut, or Columbine. It's right in their backyard. They have to have the opportunity to process that information. And as young people, they need adult models that can help them facilitate how to have this conversation, how to engage in discourse, how to problem solve as a community, how to rectify these things in their mind. And I've looked in the eyes of over 2,000 secondary age students in the last week and a half. And I can tell you this, our students, like many of our adults and parents, are genuinely scared. And there certainly is an appropriate school response to how we can make them feel more secure by doing things both with the physical structure of our building, hiring more personnel, evaluating our current security procedures, and a variety of other things, hosting student assemblies, having a dialogue, and supporting them. That's on us as a school district to do that. But we desperately need our community to focus on what's best for kids and not predetermine what they should think on this issue and try to influence them in any way. Our job as public educators is to facilitate learning and teach kids how to think, not what to think. There is no political agenda in a school system. There's only the facilitation of learning and the evaluation of whether or not students being involved in a particular activity can provide a valuable and meaningful learning experience for them. And I can tell you, as students on both sides of this issue, and heck, there's not just two sides, there's multiple sides to this issue, voluntarily participated in a form of demonstration that they felt was most appropriate for them, with the adults in these buildings coming alongside them to have a dialogue and a conversation about it. It wasn't political. There was no agenda. It was scared kids reaching out and begging the adults in their life, can you please help us understand how to process this? We went to Zemmer Middle School and watched almost a dozen students address a majority of their student body, begging their peers to change how they communicate, how they interact with one another. That change is not going to come from Lansing or from Washington or maybe even from their parents. That it was going to come from a change in their own behavior and how they treat their fellow human beings that they go to school with and live with and work with every day. That was the message of today's walkout. I see no reason why we wouldn't wholeheartedly support those efforts. I've been so honored in the last week and a half with the cooperation of the Lapeer County Sheriff's Department and the Lapeer City Police Department, with Chief Frisch and Sheriff McKenna, to share this message with your young people. And I can tell you that those two gentlemen in their respective departments provided additional security and support today to make sure students were safe in voicing their opinions. So my challenge to our community is simply this. Please help me in facilitating a civil conversation with our young people about how intelligent people problem solve, because we care about the future of this community and the future of this nation. And those young people sitting in today's classrooms are the leaders of tomorrow. And maybe it's time to admit as adults that we don't have all the answers. Certainly, if we did, many of the problems that plague our society would have already been solved. And our students are frustrated that those problems haven't been addressed or solved and ended some of the violence that we're seeing in our schools. I don't have the answers. This is a complex situation, a complex problem that requires a multifaceted and varied approach to identifying solutions. Our students recognize that, they see it, and they're begging us to have a dialogue where we're not screaming at one another, but we're genuinely interested in finding solutions and not simply parroting political talking points. Because I'm not interested in politics of this issue. I'm interested in protecting your children, as I know you are. So please join me in helping guide our young people in an effort to teach them how to think and not necessarily what to think. My vision of our students was completely changed, has been completely changed in the last week and a half. Their capacity to speak and articulate possible solutions and what they can do as active members of our democracy was unbelievably refreshing today. I only wish I could put on display for our entire community to see how your children behaved today. It was remarkably impressive. And it's refortified my energy to help guide this conversation with and for them. Their educational experience is what we are here to safeguard and monitor. And that is our unfailing mission. Please help me in that. Please have conversation with them. I know many of you are. But let's not presume negative intentions. Let's not be pessimistic about the issues with our kids. Let's demonstrate to them that there are answers, there can be common ground on this, and they're not just kids. They have the capacity to have these conversations. They have the capacity to identify solutions. And beyond that, they can articulate those things very well. And I want to support them in doing it, and I know you want to do that as well. I want to thank you for those of you that have communicated to me personally in the last several weeks about what the district is doing, what you think we can do to improve. All of those things are on the table. Everything we've discussed in the past 2 weeks is on the table for consideration. Some of those changes and adjustments and improvements will happen in the very short term. Some may take a little bit longer to process and implement. But you have my word that no matter what, we're doing all of this with your children in mind. And it starts with listening to them. Because it's difficult to stand in a room of 1,000 scared teenagers and try to convince them that the adults in our community are doing everything they can to protect them. We've got to work together. We've got to come together on this issue. Leave the politics aside. Kids are scared, and they need us now more than ever. Thank you.